If your board wants a silent auction but your team is already stretched thin, let's talk through all of that in this video. I'm Danny Dada Rosa. As a benefit auctioneer and gala fundraising consultant, I've helped nonprofit leaders raise over $50 million. And there are so many situations I've seen where my client is super reluctant to continue a silent auction or to add a silent auction, but their board is insisting that they do so. So in this video, we're going to break down exactly how to decide if a silent auction is worth it for your event. And if you decide that it's not, maybe some points you can bring up to your board members to help gently convince them that it is not worth your time and energy to pursue. So let's get into it. A few years ago, my husband left town for the weekend, and I thought this was my opportunity. I had 36 hours. I had been wanting to replace the backsplash in our kitchen, and at this point in time, I made it my mission. Before he came back for the weekend, from his weekend trip, I was going to have the entire backsplash done. So not sketched out, not partially done, but I was going to have it completed. In this kitchen, there were one of those big bulky microwaves that hangs right under the cabinet. And it was something that I had to remove in order to install the backsplash. So like any reasonable person, I looked up the instructions on how to remove it. And everywhere said the same exact thing. This is a two-person job. This is a two-person job. Over and over again, this is a two-person job. But there was no way anything was going to stall my momentum, especially a logical decision. So I decided to figure out how to make this a one-person job on my own. So what I did was I got 2 of those 5-gallon Home Depot orange buckets. I flipped them upside down and I placed them underneath the microwave. Then I grabbed 2x4s and I stacked them up on top of these buckets until there was just an inch left between the 2x4s and the microwave. My plan was simple. I was going to unscrew the screws of the microwave until the microwave started to gently fall down right onto the 2x4s, and then I was going to, get a better grip on the microwave so I could pick it up and I could move it out of the kitchen. So started unscrewing the screws. Everything was going to plan. The microwave dropped perfectly on these 2x4s just like I had thought. But then one of the 2x4s got loose and it sprang up and it nearly smacked me in the face. It was so close to hitting me in the face that it took me a second and I froze and I took some of those breaths. I was like, whoa, that was a close one. Now, in that moment when I was frozen, I thought about 2 things. First of all, that I was very, very lucky. But second of all, that, if everywhere in the instructions it says it's a 2-person job, maybe it actually is a 2-person job. Now, where this relates to your silent auction is that so often on paper, a silent auction looks manageable. It looks easy. It looks like something you can just add. But the reality is it's not a 1-person job. It's not even a 2-person job. A silent auction is a multiple-person job because there's the procurement of the packages. There's designing the packages. There's the data entry of getting them all put into a mobile bidding system or even creating the paper bidding system. There is pricing them. There is ensuring that the description has all the details in them, that there's great pictures of them. There's setting up the silent auction physically. There's doing the checkout for it. There's managing the packages if they're not all taken home by the donors that night. There are so many layers to a silent auction that it is extremely time intensive. So let's get into exactly how to determine if this is actually worth it for your gala. The first point to consider is here in the Fundraising Streams Matrix. The Fundraising Stream Matrix shows us the order of importance for fundraising streams based on level of excitement, funds raised, ROI, all of those types of things. So first and foremost, you have to make sure you've maximized your paddle raiser. Do you have an amazing mission moment, video, or speaker that precedes your ask? Have you filled the audience with plants and matches to make your paddle raiser as successful as possible? Do you have a professional to help you with your paddle raiser? All those different considerations. If that's a yes, then you move over to your live auction. Is it worth adding a live auction to your event? We have a previous video about that you can dive into, but you determine whether or not you want to add a live auction because the ROI on that is also higher than a silent auction. If those things are a yes, then you can look into adding a silent auction. But the first thing that you need to make sure of and confirm with your board is that majority of time and effort has been placed into making sure your paddle raiser is going to be as profitable as possible. The silent auction must earn its place. Now, let's say that it is time to add a silent auction based on the order of operations in the Fundraising Streams Matrix. Then the next consideration is, does your team have the capacity and the resources to pull off a silent auction? So remember, a silent auction is not a one-person job, a two-person job, it's a multi-person job. And if it does end up being a one-person job, they are literally spending the majority of their time on these silent auction packages. If you have a big volunteer group, you might be able to pull off a silent auction. If you're a school, you can likely pull off a silent auction because parents can, donate parent parties, they can donate bottles of wine, unused gift cards. If you have more people to support, then you might have the capacity to pull off a silent auction. However, if you are a small team, you might not have the capacity. So just think of it this way. You could spend 5 hours filling out silent auction donation forms, following up with people, following up to get the details of the donation, and put together a package that is going to make you $200 in a silent auction, versus spending those same 5 hours having coffee meetings and phone calls and presentations to potential sponsors and high net worth donors that can be plants and matches. And you could end up with $5, $10, $15, $20,000 from those 5 hours versus the $200 that you would spend putting 5 hours into a silent auction. So understanding the capacity of your team and who's going to be working on what helps to determine if a silent auction is actually going to be worth it for you. Now, let's say that you are reluctant to put on a silent auction, but your board is still pushing for it. They've seen the Fundraising Streams Matrix and that didn't convince them. You've talked about this issue of capacity and resources and that didn't convince them. Then I would go to the math next. So you want to project, how much revenue could we make from this silent auction potentially? And how many hours is it going to take to put together? And you want to break down that math so that your board members or even yourself or your own team can see exactly how much time it's going to take and is that actually worth the return you're going to get on it. So breaking down the exact math is very helpful in realistically determining whether or not it's worth adding a silent auction. Now, let's say all these things are true or the board still wants you to add a silent auction. The last consideration is just to simplify the silent auction to create more of a boutique silent auction. So the idea being that if it feels like a garage sale, it's going to trigger a bargain hunting mentality. And what triggers a bargain hunting mentality is, first of all, too many items, or second of all, too many individual items. That will trigger people to want to look through everything. Like when you go to like a TJ Maxx Home Goods or a flea market or a garage sale, you want to look through every single thing to see what you can get the best deals on. That's the energy that is created when a silent auction isn't boutique. So to simplify it and to make it boutique, you'd be looking at less packages, but the packages would be really valuable. So you don't want to just throw anything into your silent auction. You want it to be something a bidder is going to be really excited to bid on and to go home with. And if you've done this properly, you've chosen the right packages and you've priced them correctly, then all your packages should meet or exceed the fair market value, which should make the return on investment a lot higher for your silent auction as well. So just kind of think of it this way too. If you were to see a really cute purse at a flea market, you might haggle a little bit on the price of it. But if you saw that same cute purse hanging in a boutique for $100, $200, you might pay the full price for that without even considering it. And it's partially how it's been curated and displayed. So if you are going to do a silent auction, but you have a small team and resources are limited, a very boutique silent auction is the only thing that likely makes sense for your team to make sure the ROI is high. So to recap, just like the microwave job was a two-person job, a silent auction is way more than a two-person job. It has to earn its place among your fundraising streams. So again, first off, you want to make sure you review the Fundraising Streams Matrix to ensure it is time to add the silent auction and that you have maximized the other higher ROI fundraising streams. The second thing you want to do is you want to make sure that the capacity on your team is there and realistic to pull off a silent auction. The third thing is to do the math and really understand, what is the return on working on this silent auction? How much money could it potentially bring in versus how many hours are being put into it? And also include the cost of any silent auction mobile bidding software in this projection. And the last thing is, if you are going to add a silent auction, you might need to make it a lot smaller and a lot more boutique in order for it to be worth the amount of time that it takes to put it together and that you can get the return you need. Just like so many things in fundraising and in galas, your silent auction shouldn't be a tradition. It should be a fundraising strategy. If this video has been helpful for you, subscribe to our newsletter below and we will send you more like it. And as always, we hope you have your most profitable gala yet.